Welcome to Jack and the Bean Talk for September 1st, 2020 with special guest Ben Nielsen
Thanks
today.
for having me. I appreciate you. Appreciate you inviting me up to this one.
You're welcome, Ben. So obviously the Nuggets played the Jazz in Game 7 tonight. Our offense was non-existent in the second half, but somehow, some way, the Nuggets pull off Game 7, and they ultimately pull off coming back from down 3-1 to the Utah Jazz. And now we will play the Los Angeles Clippers. So I guess for you, Jack, I'll just start off with your impressions of the game.
Yeah, well, we were up like, what was it, like 17, I think?
19, yeah.
19 at one point in the second quarter. And then I guess Utah came back. They took maybe like a 2 or 3 point lead at their best. And then, I think Murray found a way to step up again in the fourth quarter there. He had some clutch shots. He definitely wasn't at his best most of the game, though. I think he finished with let me see. 17
good.
points. Yeah. Just still that's it's not bad. It's what we saw like most of the year. But now that we're just expecting like 50 points every night. But I think it can show that like the Nuggets don't need like an amazing Murray to win every day. Like that's my dog upstairs.
All right.
All right, Ben, what were your thoughts on the Nuggets 80-78 victory?
See, I think a lot of people are being hard on Jokic, and he didn't play his best. I will admit that there were some times that he just looked like he was running around there. But he still finished with 30 points, and that's 30 of the 80 points that we scored tonight, which is insane. Like, just because Murray only had 17, I mean, we shut down Mitchell very well. I mean, Gary Harris, he was pretty abysmal on offense. But, I mean, Donovan Mitchell was 9 for 22 points. Like, we shut him down considering he'd been shooting 60% before this.
Yeah, I think that this Nuggets Game 7 mirrored the 2 Game 7s from last year, where we have this lead and then we let it slip, and it just feels like this is the third time it's happened. So it's something habitual about Game 7s with this team. And you saw it in Game 1 too, where it's like, let's just try to keep the lead. But for whatever reason, that third quarter was tough and we couldn't make anything. And then Jokic obviously got the game-winning bucket, but that was even on a play where you're just like, oh, man, he's looking around, and he kind of just shot one up and it went in. But I guess that was kind of what Game 7 was. The announcers talked about it, too, near the end of the game. That was more so Jokic versus Gobert in that last little bit, and Jokic gets the last laugh, obviously. We'll talk about Torrey Craig in a second, and then the end of game sequence.
I'll talk about Torrey Craig. Oh, my God. I'll talk about him.
Okay, go for it.
That was a terrible play. We had 5 seconds left, and we're up 2. Why do you go for a layup? You learn that in elementary school basketball. It's a terrible mistake, especially since he missed it. Like, if he made it, it would have been fine. But since he missed it, and the fact that Conley even got a shot off, and that was a really good final shot, like that would have been an embarrassment. It's not being talked about how lucky the Nuggets were that Conley missed there, especially since that was such a good shot. I thought it would go in.
Yeah, it looked like it was going to go in for a second, too, and then it just something willed it out there.
Yeah. He's really just in there for his defense, though. He's not really going to be an offensive threat, and I think some of his, that was kind of his downfall there at the last play. Should have just given it to Murray or, just dribble it out, really, or take the foul.
Dribble it out.
They would have fouled anyways, but go to the free throw line.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Nuggets get up 48-31 in the second quarter, and then Murray goes down. This was probably the turning point of the game. I don't know what exactly Murray's stats were at that point, but I mean, he looked human tonight. I mean, we can't like you guys said, we can't expect 50 points from him every night. And now we're going into a series against a team that is probably known more so for their defense. I guess the Jazz are too. Gobert, obviously, one of the best defensive players in the league. But just Murray getting injured, it felt like it was just kind of unraveling again. And it just had so many similarities to Game 7 against the Spurs last year and Game 7 against Portland this year. So, but this team's gonna fight too. This team has more fight in it, I think, than last year's team. Coming back from down 3-1, I personally wasn't expecting them to end up winning this series, especially after games 2 and 3 where we get basically ran off the floor. And then game 4, we make it close but lose a tough one. But these guys fight. And I think that to a degree, Michael Malone, even though some of his decisions down the stretch with who he puts in the game can be questioned. That
Like Plumlee with 1 minute left.
Yeah.
I saw after the Gobert alley-oop, I was like, okay, how did Jokic let that up? And then I saw it was Plumlee. And I was like, oh, my God, Malone, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So I mean, so I guess I'm just putting a wrap on this Utah series. Donovan Mitchell was it just felt like Donovan Mitchell, this series was his, and then it wasn't. It was Jamal Murray's series. And then Game 7 happened, and it ended up being the Nuggets series by the very smallest of margins. And we're moving on to play a Clippers team. What's your first impressions of the matchup in this series, and how do you think we'll be able to bounce back in a Game 1 against the Clippers after how this Game 7 against Utah transpired?
We're definitely at a disadvantage, I think, having played 7 games. Clippers, they played like 5 games, right?
They played 6 games.
6, okay. But still, like, I don't know, that Game 7, it takes a lot out of you, and they just look exhausted there at the end of the fourth quarter. And then we only have, I think, 1 off day, and then we go right into the series. I think that's what they were saying. Yeah. So that's, not a lot of rest in between games. But I think, the Game 7 is definitely an experience, and I think that's good for still a pretty young team. And I think the Nuggets do still have a lot of momentum going into that. And I think we'll use that to our advantage.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, obviously the Clippers have a lot more star power, I say, than the Jazz do. But I mean, Paul George has just been the worst player in the bubble. Playoff P has just been terrible. I mean, the Clippers are always a tough matchup for us, especially in the ref game when they have players like Patrick P. Bev who will just get a million fouls. Like if you saw the foul disparity in those games that we lost against the Jazz earlier, I'm sure we'll have some games like that where the fouls or the free throws, the Clippers get 20 more than we do or something ridiculous like that. So that's what we got to watch out for, I think.
Kind of talking about fouls, kind of pivoting here, but like with Jamal Murray and Jokic, how should the refs be giving them that superstar treatment, or have they not proven enough yet?
I remember last year I saw, I was just in class, I'm reading NBA news, and I saw that Jokic was literally like the unluckiest in the league when it came to fouls. I mean, like, I feel like Jokic at least has the right to get more fouls than he does, especially with his play style. But I think honestly it makes what our team is. We fight for our victory and people count us out.
Yeah, I think Murray's definitely deserved the foul treatment. I think after this series, I think obviously he's up there. And then Jokic did get, I think it was like in the second quarter, he had a total flop against Gobert. I think Gobert just like touched his stomach a little bit, and Jokic totally flopped, and he got that foul. So I think it's starting to turn that way, I think, a little bit for Jokic.
I mean, I remember last year, especially in the playoffs, when my friends would watch the games, especially against the Blazers, and people would just see Jokic's one just absolutely terrible flop per game. And I'm sure we all know what we're talking about when he just flails backwards And like, oh my God, he's such a flopper. But he does that maybe like once every other game.
Yeah,
I feel like he doesn't do it often. It's nothing ridiculous like Patrick Beverly, like I mentioned earlier, or Harden. So, like, I
Yeah.
mean, I think he's just got to learn how to sell it more.
Yeah, he's too big to flop, I think. It's just
Yeah.
not really his style. I don't know. Doesn't look right.
Yeah. So, we're going up against the Clippers this next series. In the regular season against them, I'm pretty sure we had the 3 games against them. First game was a second night of a back-to-back, actually, where the first night we lost to Cleveland, of all teams, and we ended up winning that game. Then we had a game at Staples Center, I think the end of February, if I'm not mistaken, where we didn't look great. And then the bubble, we're competitive with them through 3 quarters, but then Malone rests the players in the 4th quarter. Do you think that Malone's decision, or do you think that game has like any bearing on how game 1 might go, just based off like how familiar they are with the other team? Or do you think that gives the Clippers a false sense of confidence that they did beat us in the bubble, but that 4th quarter we had our second game on the floor?
I would say more of a false sense of confidence. Like the Nuggets 8 seeding games are totally different than what we saw in the playoffs. Like PJ Dozier was playing all the time. Like Bol was in. Like they're a totally different team. Yeah, again, like the Nuggets like barely hit any of their starters in the 4th quarter. And I'm not so worried about like. I feel like familiarity in basketball isn't as big of a deal than some sports like maybe baseball or I don't know, maybe football to some extent. Because I don't think it's like a huge advantage. And we only saw them three times this year. So yeah.
Yeah, I have to agree there. I mean, bubble basketball is just entirely different. And I mean, we haven't even been playing Dozier the past few games, even though the one game we played him against the Jazz, he shut them down defensively. But I mean, I think Malone, like apart from the putting Plumlee in with 1 minute to go, like I think honestly his roster moves are a little better tonight, especially in the first quarter and first half. Like Millsap, he's been absolutely terrible this whole series. I mean, there's no getting around that, and he was only played for 14 minutes tonight. So I mean, it took Malone 7 games to realize that, but hopefully he knows what he's doing against the Clippers.
Yeah, I also think getting Gary Harris back on defense definitely was a huge factor in the
100%.
series.
Was huge.
Yeah,
you got that. Was he part of that steal at the end there, or that was Grant? I think.
Yeah, it was Grant and Murray, I think.
I think having like that second look for Mitchell with Harris, I think that played a huge role in game 6 and 7. Just give Murray a break from defending him, because the Jazz didn't have that second guy. Like if Murray wasn't getting guarded by Mitchell, it would be like Ingles, and there was like a huge mismatch. And I think that's what led to Murray going off the last couple of games.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I just think having Gary Harris back in game 6, especially against Jordan Clarkson. Clarkson was playing really well earlier on in the series. But once we got Gary Harris back, shut Clarkson down, negated a second scoring option from Utah as far as like one individual player. But yeah, Millsap struggled a lot the whole series. I mean, he's a good older veteran presence to have in the locker room. But after this season, just like based off of how he's playing the first round, he needs a good second round against the Clippers if he wants to stay on the team, I think, for the future. So
Millsap is old. I mean, it could just be that he's finally letting age catch up to him, and the bubble just didn't help that, just being inactive for that long a time. I mean, we're seeing it in other sports. I mean, I know we're talking about basketball right now, but if you look at NASCAR with Jimmy Johnson or Formula One with Sebastian Vettel, a lot of these older drivers are struggling after their bubble and after their break they had. So I mean, it's not insane that the same thing is spreading to basketball, I think.
Yeah, for sure. We could go on an F1 tangent, but we won't. So just early predictions for this series. How do you guys think it's going to play out?
I think you go ahead.
Okay. I'll say, I don't know, just be optimistic. I'll just say Nuggets in 6. That's very I can't just say Clippers.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a tough one. I mean, Clippers have a lot of star power. It's going to be hard fought, and I know Clippers are going to be getting the benefit of the refs, whatever. So I think just based on that alone, it's going to go to at least Game 7. And Malone loves those 7-game series, so I'm sure that will happen again.
We can't take games 2 and 3 off against the Clippers. That's for sure.
Exactly.
They just got to play every game like a Game 7.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just really hard for me to think that we're gonna win after Mike Conley almost buried us at the end.
We came back from 3-1 though. There's something to be said.
I mean, the Clippers are so inconsistent though. That's the thing. Everyone hypes them up as, oh yeah, once they play the Lakers, they're gonna ball out and beat the Lakers. But it's also a matter of they've been super inconsistent throughout the season. They were super inconsistent against Dallas. And now, I don't know. I think that the Nuggets will definitely win some games in this series. I mean, we have a chance. I'd probably say it's like probably 65-35 towards the Clippers. Though.
I think it depends on if Kawhi shows up or not. I mean, there are definitely times where he phones it in, and it's very obvious when he phones it in. So it's going to depend on what Kawhi they get.
He's still one of the greatest playoff players of all time, I guess.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, we'll see.
I just think that they've been inconsistent, and I think I don't know the Lakers once they got to the playoffs went to playoff mode. So I think they're a shoo-in for the conference finals, barring something like totally crazy happening with either the Thunder or the Rockets beating them. But yeah, I think that the Nuggets know what's in front of them now, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Excited though.
Yeah, very excited.
I'm glad we're back in the situation, but it's going to be another tough look if we have another 10 years of losing Game 7s. I mean, that's all my childhood was. So I hope they pick it up.
The Nuggets losing Game 7s, we'd always just lose in the first round.
First round or close series.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like we've been given these two teams that can't just show consistency as far as the Nuggets, Avs, even the Rockies. Broncos are still rebuilding, so we'll see with them. But yeah.
At least we have the Broncos.
At least we do have. At least the Broncos, when they're good, they're good.
Yeah. They're a step above, I think, any other team in Colorado.
Yeah, for sure. Alrighty. Well, anything else you guys want to add about the Nuggets?
I just want to see more production off the bench. We got to get Plumlee, the Millsaps, Grant, just take that extra step up in the playoffs. And, Murray probably can't do it all by himself again. And yeah, do whatever you need to do to stop Kawhi. I think once you can do that, then, it goes to George, and George hasn't had the best season in the bubble. So I guess I'm optimistic for that reason.
Yeah, I agree. I think most of it's going to come down to Malone. Can he beat the Clippers matchups? I mean, in the past, he's shown that he is not really willing to make changes that will put us at an advantage, even when the change seems obvious. He seems very stuck in his ways, and we're not going to beat the Clippers unless we are willing, unless Malone is willing to put in the players that will make the difference.
For sure. Yeah, one thing I would like to add on is that Michael Porter, I don't know, I thought I heard somewhere that like Murray and Jokic have been like coaching him on the floor, kind of the same way that other players had to coach Jamal Murray on playoff defense last year. And I think we've seen improvement with MPJ as far as the series has progressed against Utah. I think that also had to do with Gary Harris being back also, though. And I guess to tie a bow on it, hopefully I'm planning on being back on here throughout all my podcasts throughout the week, as long as the Avs stay in it. I'm sure I'll talk about the Avs. I'm sure Ben will want to come back on for more Nuggets.
I don't watch hockey.
Yeah, so so it's a very stressful time to be a Denver sports fan, but I guess what I can say is that there should be a sense of thankfulness for having our teams even in the playoffs right now, because there's a lot of teams that really would want to be in the position that the Nuggets and Avs are in right now. So,
Yeah, well said.
All righty. Well, I hope that everyone has a good night. Game 1, Thursday night, 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Nebraska time.
Thank you.
9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific.
What about Hawaiian? 3:30.
It's something like that.
That's 3:30. 9:30 Eastern, 3:30 Hawaiian.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you all for watching, and we'll see what happens with the playoffs the next few days.
Thank you for having me, Bean. It was a pleasure.
Sure thing. Thank you, Jack.
All right, you're welcome.